Hello, Jeremy and Amanda.
Hello.
Hi.
So, how are you doing? It's rather snowy and cold here. How's it where you are at this time?
Well, it's definitely cold. It snowed a few days ago, but it warmed up just enough for that to clear. Now we're back to cold with no snow.
Yeah, it's
Uninteresting
frosty.
cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that bad for you where you're at. Is it pretty windy out that way?
Not at the moment. I was just outside a few minutes ago and it was pretty calm, but yesterday was very windy, and earlier today we had some pretty strong gusts.
Yeah, again, those plain states, it can be pretty brutal sometimes. So
Hmm.
you two are just from what I understand, just fulfilled the see if I can pronounce it right, the Corvaxian Codex.
Yes. Yes. My zine for Dungeon Crawl Classics. All the packages went out this week, and I'm starting to see posts online on Discord and Twitter, people saying they received theirs.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. So, what was the process for creating something to actually kickstart and publish?
That's a funny story.
Well, I was watching the two Maleficent movies with my wife and kids one day. My wife, you know, that character would
Yeah, yeah. I don't think the
make
mic's picking you up fully. I don't know if you need to be closer to the mic or
that's fine.
that's
So, I was watching the Maleficent movies with my wife and kids one day, and about partway through one of them, uh, I turned to Amanda and said, Divol would make a really cool character in the game. Yeah, you should write that up. Okay. So I made a few notes and set it aside and then kind of forgot about it. And then in May, I saw an announcement for the OSR jam coming up on Itch in June. And I thought, well, I don't know. I write stuff all the time. I've never put anything out there. Maybe I'll do something for that. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, and then I was at work one day and I remembered that previous idea, and I thought, I wonder if I could write that up in time. So I spent the next couple of days putting it together. Reached out to Phil Stone, who's an artist I admire. I have quite a lot of books that feature his art. And, asked if he'd be willing to contribute some pieces for me, and sat down and wrote it all up. Amanda had a little bit of experience doing some minor layout projects, but never a book before, and she wanted to try it. Said, sure,
oh,
we'll
okay.
give it a go, and she put the whole thing together and made it look nice, and I sent it off to Goodman Games for approval so I could put that compatible with DCC logo on the front. And they came back within a couple of days with, yeah, it's approved. Go ahead and use the logo. And if you ever decide to do a print run, we want 30 copies. Okay. I I thought this would be a neat little thing that some people might like, some people might not. But now Goodman Games wants copies. Maybe I
All
should take this a little more seriously.
yeah.
So when the last Zine Quest came around, well, let's uh, let's do a Kickstarter and see if we can do a print run.
So Mandy, you're the one that did the layout, and it's unusual to see. Not everybody has a team, but also a husband-wife team. That's really quite an amazing thing, really.
Yeah, I did the whole layout in Canva. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
No.
So I use Canva to make labels for soap making. I make soaps. So for my labels and the designs for that, I was using Canva to make my artsy labels. Well, I was just like, I've done some stuff here, can I do a book? I'm like, this is all I have available. Let's see if I can give it a go. And I was already pretty proficient about, adding stuff and using different fonts and, doing layouts for my, teeny tiny little soap labels. So I was like, all right, well, I'll give it a go. And sitting down, once he had all the content written and all the art, took me about 4 hours in an evening.
Yeah.
About 4 hours for us to have the layout done.
And then 3 days of constantly second guessing it.
Yeah, because I like to do that.
So I'm absolutely, I think if ever is a statement that you don't need expensive software, you can just do with what's on hand. You proved it with Canva.
Yeah, I really did. And that was actually, we had a little bit of an issue when it came to the actual printing process. We went through Mixum, is that who we went through? Yeah. And I was having issues because I didn't account for the bleed. Because again, my first
Right.
time doing a layout for a book. And so I had to call them because he was working so much and he was gone during their business hours. And so finally got a hold of somebody and I was trying to explain the fact that I was having issues because I did it in Canva. And the guy's like, wait, you did this in Canva? And I'm like, yeah, I did this in Canva. And so like it was this really, really awesome phone call. And like he's like, I've never heard of anybody being able to accomplish something that looks like this in Canva. That's really awesome. It was a huge boost to my confidence.
Well, so the question, yeah. I mean, and I've never heard of it, but it is interesting that a lot of people think that they need this or they need that, but really, it's all the tools are really at hand. You just got to be able to have the eye to see that they're available and use them.
Yeah, most definitely. And Canva actually has a free version. So you can do some stuff on free. So you don't even need to pay anything for it if you don't want, like the special fonts and everything else. So yeah, you can do it for on the cheap.
So now, did you also make some Corvaxian soap?
Okay, so I have not made any soap related to any of the stuff he's written. We talked about that for his next project. We talked about it.
Yeah, she likes the idea of it, but is also terrified that other people are going to like the idea of it, and there's suddenly going to be thousands of bars that she has to make.
Yeah, I think that's the only like overwhelming part about it is if people really really want it. That's an awful lot of work for me to do in my kitchen.
Well, what you do is if you do it for a Kickstarter, or at least if you use BackerKit, with BackerKit you can limit the number of an add-on.
Yeah, we talked about that. That is something we did talk about, like do like a limited run, and then that's all I make.
Or
Yeah,
or the limited run, or could be like the first day, people who back the first day get a bar soap.
Not a bad idea. We'll have to go and smell some of my scents in there and figure out one for the next project. And
Yeah, because really, what I understand, which isn't a lot, but what I do understand is that at least what I think I understand, is that Kickstarter's algorithm, if you do really well your first day, it really juices the algorithm. And so that's why a lot of people offer those early bird specials, is that if it's got a strong start, then it will get pushed more to the front by Kickstarter.
yeah, and this one, the Corvaxian, was funded in what, like 40, less than 48? No, how quick was it?
I don't remember. It was a lot going on at that time.
Yeah, it wasn't very long though. It didn't take very many days, I don't think, because you only put it on for 15 days. So
Well, that's the hard part, knowing how much time. I think for what you did, I think that's probably sufficient. I did a month for Gary's appendix, and that was the right amount of time because I had people trickling in the whole time. And I did a month for Fane of the Fly God, and it just I had like a full week of just nothing, of just desert, of
Mm.
just watching the crops wither and die in the field is what it felt like. So there, probably 3 weeks would have been perfect. So it's hard to know until you do it, but
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I don't think especially first time out, I don't, because it's I guess the question, I don't know the question, but I guess so it's a big leap to go to Kickstarter, like mentally, emotionally. I mean, it's really quite a step from going, I have an idea, to I'm really willing to put this out there for people to consume and to even just judge and weigh and be part of the community. So I mean, it's just not many people are willing to do that. So, but it sounds like you guys kind of were off and on about this, but you finally made the jump. So what was kind of, but once you made the decision, was it easier, or was it still hard once you made that decision to go forward?
Uh, well, parts of it were very easy, and parts of it were incredibly nerve-wracking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, making the decision to do the Kickstarter, I think I came to that pretty easily. I've got a number of people who were really excited about the product from the original digital launch, and then Goodman Games saying that they wanted to carry copies was a pretty huge confidence booster there. But once I decided to do it, then finding out all the little things that you need to include to have a good Kickstarter, uh, that's where it got a little more complicated for me.
You mean like making a video?
Yeah, you need to have a video, and you need to have this, and you need to have that. I don't know how to do any of that stuff.
And didn't Mike?
Uh,
Well, Mike did your video for you, right?
yeah, Mike
Yeah.
from Two Old Guys Games, my first and currently only supporter on Patreon. Uh, he he was he was the one to point out that it's important to have a good video. Like a lot of people won't even look at your Kickstarter if there's no video. Okay, but it's really easy. I did all the ones for the Two Old Guys Kickstarters. Like, can you help me? And he said, "Yeah, sure. What do you want in it? I'll take care of this." So yeah, he did the whole thing for me, and that was really great. And then of course, I needed some kind of sound with the videos, so I reached out to Loot the Body and said, "Hey, can I use part of one of your tracks background?" And they're like, "Yeah, just if you own it, uh, give credit and you can use it." All right, so I got a video put together thanks to the support of a couple of really great people, and that was helpful. But yeah, I was real nervous about how I was going to make that happen. And then through the run of the Kickstarter, like every day I went back and forth between, did I set the bar too low? Did I set the bar too high? Am I gonna make it? Should I do this? Should I do that? Are stretch goals a good idea? Am I uh, am I gonna screw myself over if I offer them? What's gonna happen? It's quite the roller coaster
Oh yeah.
because I'd never done it before. Backed a lot of Kickstarters, but I'd never been on this side of the project. It was
Yeah, it definitely is it is hard because you don't think about those before you go in, all those decisions, what you should and shouldn't do, price points, stretch goals. But I think for me, it's just better just to keep it fairly simple and straightforward until you get some. I haven't got to that point yet, but till you get some more Kickstarters under your belt, it's best just to keep it straightforward, I think.
He was really funny because like after the Kickstarter was like it was fully funded, and we started like running into little problems here and there, like every time we uploaded the layout to the publisher, it was off because of the bleed issue, right? And like
Yeah.
little things just here and there. He sat there and he told me, he's like, I don't think I'm he's like, I think I'm just gonna write. you just do the Kickstarter stuff. I'm just gonna write. I'm just like, yeah. Because it was just a headache for him. I mean, he was working a full-time job at the time too. So it was a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I do know, I mean, there's a reason why, being partners, there's a reason why you two are together. With me and my wife, it's definitely whenever it comes to like assembling things, I just hand her the instructions. My ability to follow instructions are great. And I can plow through a lot of things, but I think it definitely goes to show that, and that's what's hard about, doing it by yourself. There's not very many people are good at everything, and there's a lot of different skill sets and it takes to get through a Kickstarter. I mean,
Or
not just
even just creating the book. I mean, that takes a lot of skill sets.
it does, it does, and the mix of, I mean, the problem I had my first time I did it is so I'm just because I am who I am, is I was going to do a zine. I had a vision for a zine, but I kept writing and writing and writing and writing and writing, writing. The point where it's like, oh, it's too big for a zine. So I was like, well, what do I do now? Because I want to do it for Zine Quest. Like, well, I know I'll make a set of 3 zines. I'll just split it into 3 places because 2 wouldn't work. I'll do it in 3. And then when I went to mix them, I would upload and they would find an error. And then it would kick back and I had to fix it in 3 different zines at the same time because I was usually making the same mistake in all 3 of them. And that uploaded again, and then it would fault for something else. And then I had 3 separate zines I had to go through to find those errors. It's like,
So you were having the same issues we were having,
yeah.
but times 3.
Yeah, and I will say that every problem that you went through is the same problem that everybody goes through. Same stresses. This is the same. It's the same. Yeah, it's you're part of the inner circle now. You've gone through the trial of fire and of blood.
Yeah. Yeah, with his next one, it's even more complicated, like for this household, because I mean, with Corvaxian Codex, he went to Phil for the art, but for the Troika Interdimensional Mega Mall, um, I decided that I was going to teach myself how to draw, and so now I'm doing all the art for the entire book.
Very
So
cool. Yeah, I've been
yeah,
seeing you posting about the mall. I think there's a point where I was confused because it was a virtual mall you're talking about, and I thought you guys were getting space at an actual mall.
no, 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 no. Yeah, it's the book that he's worked on, and it's pretty much done.
Yeah, I have a little bit of edits I need to make, but the text is essentially done. Just waiting on her to finish up the art, put the layout together, get it out in the world.
Yeah, I know. I'm being slow about the art.
That's the hard part. That is, it's not easy. But I'll tell you what, it's to have a second Kickstarter on the heels so quickly. That's not bad. So,
Well, he has plans for possibly doing 6 next year. So he's got most of the content for a lot of them already written. He writes ridiculously fast. I'm not kidding. Like Corvaxian Codex from start to finish, when he started writing it to when I was done with the layout was 9 days. So he writes real quick. He's very seamless with his writing. It doesn't need much editing when you get to that point, and it's really easy to just kind of like copy paste his stuff in. So yeah, he really is a great writer.
well, great. It's great to be able to work those things out. I'm not a fast writer, and so my only way is either I plow through things slowly or I try and find people to do some writing for me because it's just like it's painful. At least it is for me.
Yeah, I mean, and finding somebody to help you write too. If they don't have the same vision or concept, then, it can get a little bit to be, a headache. It's one of the reasons why I offered to do the art for him for the Troika Mega Mall, because I understood what he was conceptually going for, and having somebody right here, right next to you, drawing for something that you can see in your head. And, we've been married for a while, so it's like, I know what he's referring to, but, hiring an artist out might not understand that. And finding a writer that can write like you, or give you the concepts that you need, that's gonna be pretty difficult.
Yeah, it's well, what you end up having to do is you have to really structure what it is you want and how you want it. So, you know, for me, maybe less so for you, Jeremy, but sometimes I'm writing a thing and I really don't know what I think I know what it needs to be, but I have to write through it to understand really what it is. And it may change as I'm writing.
Oh, absolutely.
And,
That happens with pretty much everything for us.
but once I do a few of those, hopefully then I have the formula down and then I can. So what's been fortunate for what's kind of helpful is I already have a couple zines done, or we'll call them zine, yeah, done, that I'm able to, even though they're different subjects and different directions, they are kind of laid out and thought out and communicated a certain way where at least I now have a body of work that I can kind of present to people to understand what I'm going for. And that does help. But it definitely forces me to have to think about communicating. And even art, it's the other one, trying to communicate to an artist what you want. It's um rather than just saying, hey, just fill this spot. It's like
Yeah.
so there you have your wife read and kind of get some ideas. You may be having some ideas, and you going back and forth really, I'm sure, helps that whole process.
That was very helpful with working through the interdimensional mega ball. I had most of it already written before she decided she wanted to do the art, but from the point that she made that decision, she of course had already read through and heard me talk about the stuff that I did write, and then we started going back and forth on, I should write this because she has an idea for that piece of art, or I'm planning on writing about this, so start thinking towards this other thing, and being able to bounce back and forth between writer and artist in the moment as things were being created. That was really neat to experience. Very different from the last project where I had everything written and said, "Help, help! I need art."
Yeah, I do find it, and I do think it is better. I think, we can create things, in a vacuum or to our own sensibilities, but it seems like it definitely helps when you have another person that you are bouncing things back and forth with. And that can be pretty insightful. You can, you give descriptions for, if you, especially if you have to like describe what you want for the artwork, they get the artwork, and then the artwork may come back different than really what you imagined, but then you see what the artist looks at and how they interpret it, then you're like, well, maybe I'll go back and change what I did to match what they did, because it's very interesting, or maybe ideas for something else. um and I know for Journey of the Madlands, the some of the art didn't really kind of fit the what I was describing, but I thought it's okay because it could just be an unreliable narrative. Like, the artwork could just be, you ever see those illustrations from, I think they're by Europeans, of Africa, where they would draw the animals based on descriptions that people gave to them.
Oh yeah,
So like the rhinoceros doesn't look like a rhinoceros, it looks like something else, but it's just like, that's okay. It's the art doesn't always have to be perfect, and it can just be kind of cool and inspiring in of itself.
Yeah, I have a hard time with the not perfect thing.
Oh,
I think that's one of the reasons why it's taking me so long. I have spent hours upon hours drawing this one piece that's still not done because I, I'm I'm putting in way too much detail. I know that, but yeah, I'm kind of a perfectionist, so it does take me a little bit longer.
So what are you using for the art? Are you hand drawing this, or are you using like Procreate, or what are you using?
So I am hand drawing characters, and then I'm taking pictures of them, and then I'm drawing over them again in Procreate. Some of the stuff is done specifically in Procreate because I tried free hand drawing perspectives and I just can't. So I just gave up. I'm like, let's just do this digitally so I have a perspective grid. It'll make it a whole lot easier. Because getting your grid set up is the hardest part about perspective drawing. Um, so yeah, the internal parts of the mall, I definitely needed to move to digital. And yeah, Procreate's been a great tool. So that's what I'm using so far.
It's probably one of the, for the price point for what it does. It's absolutely probably one of the best values ever of anything.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and if we have more than one artist in the house, so I just put it on my family sharing. So the other iPads in the house, they can also use it. We don't have to spend, the money over and over again. So, $10 for Procreate one time and multiple artists in this house are able to use it.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
So so you're planning 6 Kickstarters for 2023.
Well, that was when she asked me how many I thought I'd do next year. That was my initial estimate. The next two are pretty set in stone. The Interdimensional Mega Mall, which is mostly complete, and then Corvaxian Codex 2, which the out is complete, and I started writing on it. But I'm including several new spells, and spells for Dungeon Crawl Classics are rather involved, and I have spent most of my time working on that. So it's difficult to say what percentage complete that project is because I've mostly been working on the spells. But once I get through the spells section, the rest of it will come together very quickly. So those two for sure, and then I have several other projects that I started on uh, that I want to do some adventures for DCC. Uh, that's something that I'm gonna do for Old School Essentials, and then I have a few things that are still just in the idea phase. Some concepts for what I think would be really fun settings for a role playing game, and I've been playing around with them to polish the idea and then decide, is there an existing system that I'm familiar with and comfortable enough with that I can write this for that, or do I need to write my own system? So we'll see what happens with those. But yeah, I've got a bunch of stuff in the works. My estimate based on my availability and how quickly I can write is that I'll probably do 6 in 2023. But 2 of them are already set to launch. The other 4, I guess we'll see how.
We say set to launch. You mean like like layouts mostly been done, or are you just talking about the writing portion?
No, the writing is largely done, and we have an estimated timeline. I want to do Corvaxian Codex 2 in February because I think it makes sense to follow up a Zine Quest zine. The part 2, do it in the next Zine Quest. So do that one in February, and then depending on how things go through the rest of the year, either January or March. So either right before or right after that, do the Interdimensional Mega Mall.
So the Interdimensional Mega Mall is what's the pitch for that?
Well, I had been talking to one of my boys about Troika for a while. 'Cause he likes the concepts of role playing games, and he's very creative prior to sitting down at the table, and then he kind of loses interest 5 minutes into actually playing. Because as soon as he has to wait his turn, roll dice, things like that, his interest starts to wane. So I was pitching Troika to him as something that might be a little more his speed, and he decided he wanted to play. So we sat down with books one day. It was just the two of us at home, and he ended up picking a background out of the Academies of the Arcane, and I can't remember the name of it. Basically you're playing a blob or an ooze. And I said, okay, well, you start writing stuff down, and I'll come up with an idea. And then something popped into my head, and I thought, well, okay, this will be fun. He's always liked the Harry Potter films and books. And before Harry could go to Hogwarts, he had to go shopping for some supplies. Okay, well, why don't I do a silly troikified version of a shopping list before you go to wizard school? So I started writing down all kinds of nonsense on a piece of paper, and as I was writing it down, I thought, there's there's got to be some way for somebody to actually find these things. And it popped into my head. I know. What if there was an interdimensional mega mall that it doesn't matter where you are from or where you're headed to, what it is you want, what kind of weird thing from some other location might be, you could find it in this mall. And so I started jotting ideas down for an interdimensional mega mall and decided that it exists in the space between dimensions so that it's touching every place simultaneously, and yet it's its own thing, which then led me to think it it has to be infinite in size. It stretches on and on forever. So I started working this up, and I ended up with essentially that an extra dimensional space that exists between all other dimensions, and it's this infinite shopping complex that is so massive and so widespread. It's very easy to get lost there, and people have over time and met other lost shoppers and started families and settled down in the mall and opened their own shops. And so I don't have it hammered down yet, a quick soundbite pitch for it, but
Yeah.
that's essentially it. So you've got backgrounds like multi-generational shopkeeper and lost shopper.
It's kind of like Tom Hanks. I didn't see the movie, but where he was played a guy that based on a real life story where a guy was from a country that was at war or whatever, and then he was in the airport, and all of a sudden he couldn't go home, but he couldn't leave the airport either, and so he
Isn't
was
that
stuck in it.
is
Yeah,
it the
the terminal.
terminal?
Yeah. So it's like,
Yeah, so imagine that, but in a mall of infinite size, and you're
yeah,
not the only one that's trapped there.
yeah,
So
that's pretty wild. And so
Yeah.
that's using Troikia.
yeah,
So Amanda, are you doing this with the? Are you bumping up in your software? Or are you using the same? And I forgot the name of it. The soap label making
Oh,
software.
I am not using Canva for this. This book's going to be a lot bigger. There is no way I'm going to spend that much time in Canva. And that was just, yeah, that was ridiculous. I'm surprised I even actually was able to do it. It really is, it really is ridiculous that I was able to do it. But yeah, we're gonna be moving to a different software program.
So what?
So
What are you planning on using next? Do you think?
well, I've talked to a lot of different people, and everybody swears by Affinity, so I'm going to be buying that next month.
Yeah, and I use that. It's also a bit of a learning curve, which isn't bad, but that works. So does even Microsoft Word or even Pages from Apple. But yeah, Affinity is definitely a really good program, but it's a different way of thinking though. But I think if you learn it,
I'm
you're good to go.
Yeah, I'm pretty good with learning new software too, so it's kind of one of my fortes. So I'm pretty confident I can learn it pretty quick.
Well, since you're using Procreate, I'm sure you're using layers in Procreate. So
Oh
that's
yeah.
so that's kind of one of the things that I think a lot of people have problems wrapping their heads around. But it's pretty much what if you understand layers, that's pretty much what you're dealing with.
Oh, nice. I'm
Yeah.
kind of excited now.
Yeah, in fact, if Procreate just they just released 2.0 and they're offering 40% off. And if you spend $100, they've got it set up where you get all 3 suites, and you also get for the iPad as well.
That's right. You were telling me about they had a sale on.
Mm-hmm.
You were just talking about what last night?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you saying something about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're going to buy in, this is a time to buy in.
All right.
If you're I mean, it's $100, and it's I think but it'll cover, like say, the photo editing, the desktop publishing, and then also the vector graphics, as well as all 3 of those for the iPad as well. So
Okay. That'll be hugely helpful.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and it's I mean, even the old version still works. It's it's not it's kind of like Procreate. It's not a subscription model, but I think every few years they'll do a big, version change and then charge for that. But no, that'll be good. So um so it's quite a launch. So it sounds like you're not really necessarily sticking to one system, kind of like me. You're jumping around a bit, trying different things.
Yeah, well, I enjoy playing multiple systems, and while at the moment Dungeon Crawl Classics gets more of my gaming attention than other systems, I don't know. When I first started gaming, I was very mono system for each genre. I had one way I played fantasy, one way that I played horror. Uh, that was fun for a little while until I got more experience, got comfortable with gaming. But the more systems I read, the more wow, this one's really good at this particular thing. That one's really good at that particular thing. Sometimes you can mash them together, but sometimes you can't. And so I like to experiment with systems. I like to read systems. Uh, I'll read pretty much any role playing book you hand to me, even if I never get around to playing it. I'll at least read it. I'll absorb the approach and the
Right.
thought process. And uh, I don't know. One of these days, I think it might be fun to write my own gaming system, but that's very ambitious and not necessarily something I will ultimately do. But for the time being, yeah, writing content for the system that I think makes the most sense for the thing I want to present is the way to go. I don't want to shoehorn everything into a single system.
No.
Troika makes more sense for the Mega.
And I think also if you're wanting to, the other opportunities to just design your own system is there's a number of games that have an OGL, and you can just kind of take what's already existing and just hack it a bit.
Right. Yeah, and I've collected quite a few of the smaller games like that, PDFs on itch, and backed some Kickstarters, and print on demand, and that sort of thing. I I'm just constantly consuming gaming material, trying to see what different approaches are out there, what works, what doesn't work.
And when he says constantly, he literally means constantly. I mean, besides sleeping, it's a constant thing. I mean, we will be sitting there watching TV. Currently, it's Young Sheldon because we've already gone through all of Big Bang. But we're watching Young Sheldon, and he's got his phone, and he's reading a PDF of a game book. that is the entirety of his evenings.
Yeah. Last night I was reading my my newest PDF that was released from a Kickstarter I backed a little while back. Swords and Chaos, which is a sword and sorcery game, largely inspired by the Castles and Crusades rules. Uses the Siege engine
Okay.
as foundation, but also draws from old school D&D, AD&D, DCC, and even one or two elements from 5th edition D&D, all cobbled together in order to get the feel that the author wanted. And I think that's one of the things I really like about that is that he was able to pull from a lot of different systems and put them all together in a way that that doesn't feel uh, like a third grade cut and paste project.
Right.
Sometimes
Right.
when systems get cobbled together, that it's kind of jarring. This one is very smooth. You see the influences if you're familiar with the influences, but it doesn't feel like a hatchet job.
Or force.
And yeah, if I ever write my own system, I know at this point it's basically impossible to write something that's wholly unique. So I will be drawing from influences from all over the place. But the more I consume, the better I will be able to hopefully do what Swords and Chaos has done and present something that feels like a complete intentional system, despite the fact that it's cobbled together from half a dozen sources.
Yeah, I've not really been to many of those. They have like these fusion restaurants. They'll take like two different like ethnic groups and put them together, food groups and then or food types, and then but it's supposed to be really good, but it's maybe Mexican mixed with Indian food or Japanese cuisine mixed with Mediterranean. They'll do this fusion of creating something new out of two things that don't seem to be immediately congruent. But no, I there is
Fusion RPG.
yeah, there actually was a fusion years ago, but I spelled it with a Z. It didn't do so well. But it but anyway, so Matt, are you in on these RPG shenanigans?
Well, it depends on what part. Like the reading of the books
Or playing the games?
Okay, I play, and I've run a couple of games. I ran one game for Road Crew for DCC, on a Discord server, and it didn't go too terribly bad. But I haven't read any of the books, so I literally just took the module and ran with it. So it wasn't too bad.
She ran the Arwich Grinder funnel by Daniel Bishop. It's
Yep.
in one of the issues of the Crawl fanzine for PCC.
Yes, and I absolutely loved it. It's a great one. If you haven't read it, you should read it or play it.
Okay.
And
but
the PDF is free.
But yeah, no, and I used my family as test dummies to run it. And then I was looking at it because I didn't read it before I ran it the first time. Like I didn't even look at it. And so I'm coming up to a spot and I'm like experiencing it with all these players, and I'm like, I don't even know how to describe this without just telling them what this is. And I'm like, oh no. So I'm like trying to describe it, and like I've never run a game before, and so I'm sitting there like, I don't even know. I don't even know. I don't even know what I'm doing. So yeah, I had to tell him after the fact what I was trying to describe, and he's like, oh, there's lots of ways you can do that. And he's like giving me some ideas. I'm like, okay, now when I run this for people on Discord tomorrow, then I've got some more ideas on how I can do that. But yeah, I play. I do not read books, just because there's way too many to choose from, and I don't know where to start. He has a pretty decent library of books here, um, and he's getting a whole bunch more for Christmas. But
And a lot of Kickstarters are fulfilling right now.
yeah, a lot of Kickstarters that were backed a while ago are all trickling in. So, but yeah, it's I'm in on some of the shenanigans. Like I have been toying around with the idea of myself writing something, but again, I'm sure you've noticed on Twitter because you've been like, "Oh no, don't do that."
Yeah.
So I know you've noticed, but I don't have very much, I guess, faith in my abilities to do really anything. I second guess everything I do that's creative. So I'm kind of like, I don't really know if I even want to attempt to write. Maybe I'll just give him the ideas and have him write it. But
Well, there's a thought. There's an author from a previous generation is G.K. Chesterton, and he said anything worth doing is worth doing badly. And he talks about the amateur. Yeah, word amateur comes from somebody doing it out of love, and so amateur projects are really the purest projects. They're done with the heart. So I would say that it is worthwhile. I think if there's any idea that you want to do something, even if it doesn't come out great, it's okay.
yeah, I do have a semi sort of layout, semi sort of cohesive idea. I just
Well, like we both talked about with our experiences, Kickstarter, you and me, uh, going from I have an idea to I'm ready to put it out in the world is a big scary leap, and he's basically standing at the precipice, not quite ready to take the leap. That's where we're
Yes.
at.
I mean, with Corvaxian Codex, I was not terrified that it would fail because of his writing, because I knew his writing was good. I literally was terrified the entire time that people would hate the layout. I really, really thought that I was just going to screw it all up for him. So yeah, yeah,
Well, the thing too is, what I found is that, and I think what you did with the Corvaxian Codex is you start out with a fairly reasonable scope, in that, like the number of pages and what you did. You didn't try and do a heartbreaker, RPG system, that's 300 pages, and I mean, and I think that's kind of the key. Is for me, what I started with is when I started doing I started doing booklets. I just started taking old. So I was disenchanted with the way RPGs information was laid out, and so then I would copy and paste from the book, and I'd lay it out in a way that I wanted to see it. And if I wanted to share to players, I could make little booklets. And so then it just incrementally, everything I did was incremental, and then and that's kind of where I think it works out best, where you're not necessarily just jumping into something crazy. It seems like everything that you guys are doing so far, at least with the duo, the dynamic duo that you have going on here, it is sort of incremental, and you're bumping it up as you go, and it's not unreasonable. So I guess my point is sometimes just you start out with something, got an idea, you're not sure, just start out small and do it, and you learn from it, and you'll just grow from there.
yeah. He's been trying to poke and prod at me for writing just in general, not necessarily game related stuff. But what was it? A little over a year ago, we decided to start doing writing prompts, where you take a writing prompt and you spend 15 minutes and you just do a stream of consciousness based off your prompt. And we started doing those as part of a homeschooling tool for my daughter. And I did not realize I could write. So that was a little bit nerve-wracking when he's like, "Oh, this is really good. You should do something with this." And I'm like, "We're just supposed to do stream of consciousness 15 minutes and then just be done." And so a couple of them I did a little bit with, but yeah, he's been like, you should get back to writing. You should get back to writing. So he tries to poke that writing bear, and hopefully I will write something.
Well, the other part of us being a team is we got to encourage not just the division of labor, but it's also, of course, encouragement for the other.
Yeah. No, it is important.
And I think for me, there's a lot of writing that I did just because I have to if I want something done. So sometimes putting something out there as a goal, like I'm going to do a thing and kind of set a date, and not necessarily for Kickstarter. I mean, for myself, Kickstarter, I want things written before I go to Kickstarter. But in general, I think, okay, I want to put something up for Kickstarter in June. If I can have it in June, I need to have it written by X. I know that having a purpose to write actually motivates me to write.
Yeah, 'cause I had avoided Kickstarter for a long time because when I first heard about it, all I was hearing about was bad stories from people about how they backed this thing and they never got it, threw out all this money. I I don't want everything. But then a couple years ago, there were a couple of projects that were really kind of pulling at me and her, and so well, all right, I'll test the waters. So I backed some stuff and had a good experience with it.
Isn't one of
And
those? Didn't it just get delivered? They had so many delays with printing.
yeah, the Herbalist
Yeah,
Primer
the herbalist primer.
from
Oh yeah, I
Double
didn't
was
get that. Is it
right.
that beautiful book from Exalted Funeral?
Yep,
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty incredible. If you like that kind of stuff, it'd be worth adding to your collection. Uh, but what I found was that the folks that went to Kickstarter with an idea, some of those projects I'm still waiting on, and you'll hear nothing for months, and then it'll be oh, well, I'm sorry, I didn't know that this was going to happen and that was going to happen, and so now I'm behind. We got to push it back. Stuff was supposed to have been fulfilled last May. It's November. Haven't heard from you in 2 months, and you're not done writing yet. Why did you go to Kickstarter? But the ones, the the ones that had a finished project and they went to Kickstarter to fund the production of the thing they had written, no problem at all. I have no qualms, no reservations, no worries whatsoever. If Eric Bloat puts a Kickstarter out there, I back it. Why?
Right.
Because I know it's going to be a good product. There might be spelling errors from time to time, but it's going to be a good product. It's going to fulfill on time or early, no trouble at all, and I'm going to enjoy it. When Philip Reed puts something out there, the only thing that uh, causes pause for me is that he literally has a Kickstarter up every week, and sometimes I simply can't afford to back everything that man produces. But there's only been one thing that I backed from him where there were any delays, and it wasn't his fault. The work was done. He sent it off to the printer, and the printer dropped the ball like 4 times. And then the shipping company dropped the ball a couple of times. But it wasn't on him. He was already done. He was ready to go. It was stuff outside of his control. So there's certain people, they put something out there. I have no reservations about backing their material because I know they've already finished. They're just looking for the money to be able to produce it. Great. Here's the money. Produce it. Send me my copy. Everybody can be happy. But having had some of those experiences, you know what? I'm never going to go to Kickstarter with an idea. I'm going to go to Kickstarter either with a completely finished project or a project that's really only missing 1 or 2 things. Like, well, my artist was supposed to have a piece back to me by today. They don't have it yet, but this Kickstarter is going to run 30 days. I can go ahead and launch. That's fine. If I run into a snag with that, I've got plenty of time between the end of the Kickstarter and fulfillment to source another artist. But yeah, the idea of asking people to fund something that you haven't actually put any work into is that's not something that I could ever do. So I appreciate guys like you that go to Kickstarter when you're ready to produce, and that's who I want to be at all times.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's two reasons. One, it's the business side of things. It's like I know people are more likely to back my work if it's, especially if I can already have a proof copy in hand. Not always possible, but the second thing is I don't want the pressure of pushing something out before it's ready, just because I got backers. I'm delayed, so it's like, because I don't want to get in a position where I start cheating the writing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's, the other stuff I can kind of wiggle around with, but the writing, it's just like, you hate to shortchange the writing just to get something out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure you can agree. I'd much rather push back my Kickstarter launch date than push back my fulfillment.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I usually put my fulfillment dates well past where I believe I'm going to fulfill. I'll
Well,
put
I
up
set
months
my
past when I think I'll fulfill.
I set my fulfillment date for December, anticipating that if there were no problems whatsoever, I'd actually fulfill in October. Well, I ended up fulfilling in the middle of November. So halfway between what I hoped for and what I thought was worst case scenario. So not too bad.
Yeah, the biggest hang up with the fulfillment was actually the POGs. No joke. The POGs were the things that hung up the whole process, because it just, it was a headache.
But when you're
So,
dealing with a small company and they go on vacation and don't tell you until after you've started dialogue. Yeah.
So, because I see the POGs, listed on the Twitter. So those just cut out of, it's like real thick paper stock.
No, well, sort of. Did you ever collect POGs in the 90s?
No,
Or
I'm
at
just
least
that
see them
old.
at the drugstore?
Yeah, no, the
Okay.
POGs, I'm too old for POGs.
Well, in the 90s, every drugstore you went into had big barrels full of them as well. So even if you didn't collect them, you may have seen them. But
Yeah,
it's
I didn't understand. I was already, kids get off my porch at that time too. Or get out my yard, I should say.
yeah. So they're these round inserts to a drink bottle cap. That little freshness insert inside some bottle caps
Yeah.
that help create the seal. Well, that's kind of how it started.
In what,
And
Hawaii? I believe pineapple orange guava or something like that.
yeah,
That's how they got the POGs.
and kids would take them and collect them and make a game out of them, and then it became a commercialized industry of making these caps with different images on them so that you could collect your favorite. Well, in Dungeon Crawl Classics, if you're using the Lenkmar rules, there's a fleeting luck mechanic where you're constantly gaining and losing luck.
Yeah.
And a number of people have made tokens using clay poker chips as their model, various tokens for the exchange of luck, so that the judge can toss you a chip, and when you spend it, you can send it back, and it's a more tactile experience. Right? Well, I like the idea of that, but I also had a few months before uh, thought about using, because I already was brainstorming the Mega Mall. Uh, I had thought about using POGs as initiative tokens for the way that initiative works in Troika, and had come across this website to make custom POGs for reasonable price. Uh, at least if you're buying lots of them.
Right.
Not so reasonable price if you're doing smaller. Uh, and so I had already been thinking about it for that. And then when I was running the Corvaxian Codex Kickstarter, uh, you know, I could do luck tokens as POGs, and while they won't be as spiffy as play poker chips, they have a dual function because they're luck tokens that you can use in the game, and they're POGs for people who want to POGs. Because I was seeing more and more on the internet that people were saying, "Man, I miss POGs. I miss POGs. I miss POGs." Something I hadn't heard anybody say in decades. Uh, I thought, I kind of miss my old POG collection too. Uh, well, this will be a neat way to provide something that people already like, which is the luck tokens, but in a format they don't already have, and it'll appeal to the people who like the POGs, and I can test out how interested people actually are before I invest in doing something for the interdimensional Mega Mall. So that's kind of how that came to be, and everybody who backed got a few of them in with their Kickstarter, 5 in each one. But
Yeah.
I ordered enough that I could do full set, because in the Corvaxian Codex there's 5 different forms depending on your level that a Corvaxian can take. So they've got their humanoid form and then 4 others. And Phil Stone did the art for all of those. So I have 5 different pieces of art from him, and I originally was not planning on doing this many different backgrounds, but I asked Amanda to play with backgrounds for those so that I could do a run of POGs, and she ended up with seven different backgrounds. I couldn't decide on what to do, and I was looking on the website and realized that they sold POG tubes that would hold 40. And I thought, well, we just do all 5 images 7 times, one for each background. That's 35. That leaves me enough room to put a custom slammer in the tube. Boom, POG sets. So not only did the backers get those for free, but I was in a position to offer as an after Kickstarter add-on option these POG sets. Joseph Goodman liked the idea, so Goodman Games is going to carry them. A few other people asked for them, and so they went out, and I don't know. We'll see how it does overall, but I thought it was a fun idea.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe you'll start trending on Twitter because of that. Now that there's only 5 people on Twitter, it should be pretty easy.
Brian from the Neon Lords of the Toxic Wasteland, he ran his Kickstarter for the Total Carnage edition, the new edition of his game, right around the same time, and I had missed his original Kickstarter, so I didn't know he had done this. But he also is a fan of POGs and had released a series of POGs with his first Kickstarter, and then was teasing the POG thing for the second one. So I discover his Kickstarter around the same time that I'm announcing my POGs. Then I see he's got POGs, and I'm getting excited about that. And I've got people on both sides saying, "Did you get the idea from him, or did he get the idea from you, or did you come up with them on your own?" And we just remember the same kinds of stuff, and happened to decide to do the same kind of thing all at once. So
Yeah, it's kind of what calculus is like. Two people that invented calculus or something within a very short period of time, but one is it's given attribution. But it's like a lot of things are just they're going to happen. It's just whatever the zeitgeist is creates it. It's like naming your children. I thought I named my children, but I realized society named my children because I thought, oh, these names are pretty new. I had not heard really that many people using these names. And then 10 years later, all the kids have those names. I'm like,
yeah.
It's like, what has happened here? Do I really make any decisions in life? Or is the zeitgeist forcing me along these directions to do these things? I don't know. I don't know if I have autonomy. I don't know.
Well, like Eric Bloat was saying to you when you had him on for Dark Places and Demogorgons about how he almost didn't put the book out originally because saw somebody else was doing something similar and finally decided, you know what, we're going different directions even though we started in the same place. I'm finding that more and more. I get ideas for stuff and I start writing it, and then a week later there's a Kickstarter that's doing something very similar, or I've written something and then I encounter a book that was written years before that uses similar themes, and the naming of children, like you said, and all kinds of stuff. You start wondering sometimes, am I in control or what's happening here? But
well, what we'll say too is because like one of my, I don't know if I mentioned on the podcast or not with Eric, but one of the things I really, really love, one of the things in life that brings me joy is listening to covers of famous songs. And when I like hearing covers, I like hearing way different. I don't want to hear, 7 people sound like Johnny Cash singing, Folsom County Blues or whatever, Folsom County Prison, whatever that is. I don't know, but Ring of Fire. But I sure do love hearing a bluegrass version. I sure love hearing a jazz version. I sure do love hearing whatever is somebody comes and does a completely different slant on it. Because the thing is, you can take the same thing, but it becomes something different and unique and really tied to individuals, musicians, when you start hearing people taking something, even though it's the same lyrics, the same, whatever the music is all generally the same, but yet it's so different once it's interpreted through another person's lens.
Yeah.
So if we add 2 authors doing the same thing collaboratively, would that be a mashup done cover style?
That would be interesting because I so like when I do on photography, I used to do a lot of photography, and I would go with some friends and we just walk around crazy places and take pictures. And we would sometimes take pictures of the same thing, but then we review what we took pictures of. They were different pictures of the same thing. Like it would be interesting I think it would be very interesting to have everybody write with set of things and just to see where it goes, even though they all start from the same place, even seem to be aiming at the different direction. I bet the journey would be entirely different.
That would be a lot of fun. Similar to the jams that you see where there's a theme and everybody writes on it, but I don't know. I wonder who all I could get on board with that. Assuming that you were on board and I'm on board, I could probably convince Eric to get on board with something like that. There's a few others who might, and it'd be interesting to pitch a very specific thing, an adventure idea or
a 5-room dungeon. The theme is this, and these are the components. It's got to have.
Can I draw the stuff out of like a hat or something?
That would be awesome.
Yeah. And then it'd be a book of 5-room dungeons that would just be all the same style of element or same components, like recipe for cooking. Everybody's cornbread comes out different.
You've got to sell Levi on this, because if it comes from Planet X Games
He
as a
wins.
suggestion,
Levi wins.
then everybody's going to be behind it.
Well, I just realized, and I'm not. Yeah, he would. I wouldn't even want to be. I don't know. I feel intimidated being the same. Yeah, in fact, writing adventures is definitely not my forte. Writing nonsense is my forte.
Yeah. I run games with I have an idea for where things start, and I have an idea for some cool things that I'd like to have happen, and then we just play and it evolves as we go. I don't usually work from a highly structured adventure. It's only been more recently that I've been trying to follow modules as written. Normally, I would pick them apart and take the parts that I want, but I've been trying to get better at following the module because I want to be able to write them, and I'm not good at it. I can write setting stuff, I can write lore stuff, I can write system stuff, I can do everything except for a structured adventure that actually makes sense.
Maybe
Yes.
I should try writing a structured adventure. Maybe that's something that I need to be doing.
Yeah, maybe.
I think if you're to do such a thing, I would recommend following the format of Old School Essentials. And I think if you can write to the format of Old School Essentials, which is very formulaic and very structured, I think you could definitely expand out of that and still write really good adventures too. And
I
add
guess
more
that means
description.
I have to open up a book.
Yeah, so it's plenty of opportunities out there, plenty of ideas, plenty of things to do. We've got so much to do, so little time. It's like
Yeah.
so it's kind of funny because I will a lot of times write things I want to do for the upcoming year, but then when I look back, it's just like this didn't turn out like I thought. So anyway, we'll see how 2023 goes. I was hoping to get 5 Kickstarters, so I'm not sure that I'll be able to do it, but that's my goal. So I have a similar goal, so we'll see how that works out.
Yeah. Well, I follow you on Kickstarter and on Twitter, so I'll be watching.
Okay.
I did back Fate of the Fly God. I had intended on Gary's appendix, but like I mentioned on Twitter, I was juggling too many things, and you said, "Don't worry about it; it'll be available later." Back somebody else's project.
Oh yeah.
So I went ahead and backed somebody else's project, but I still intend to pick that up. But yeah, Fan of the Fly God. I wasn't gonna miss that one. I was
Yeah, I really hope
definitely up my alley.
I'm hoping, and maybe, yeah, it's weird. It's just I hope it's everything that people hope it is. I try not to I don't know what to do. It is strange.
Jeff, I back and own stuff from Planet X Games and from Philip Reed, so I'm used to weird and strange and sometimes rambling.
Okay,
and I like it.
And if he doesn't like the weird and strange, I will probably like the weird and strange.
Yeah, it's and like I was talking to the gal that did the cartography, because she said that was the weirdest map she's ever had to draw. Because it's
Chloe.
Yeah, Chloe. Yes.
Yeah, she's on my list of people that I want to work with at some point. I just need to figure out how to write a decent adventure, and then I'll.
Yeah,
I'll
talk to her.
I'll tell you what, she's not cheap, but she's definitely on time and meets schedules. I mean, and is very professional. Like there's no concern there. So yes.
She's incredibly versatile with the kinds of maps she can draw.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. It is. No, she's definitely very good. And if you can find that, that cyberpunk map that she was doing, it was insane. It was insane. But I didn't realize that she was actually doing it for a client. She was pretty cagey about it at the time. So, but no, it's now the cat's out the bag, so she can talk about it. So, but anyway, well, I think we're hitting the time space continuum. It's great having you two on.
No, thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, largely is it's very apparent from the stuff on Twitter that you two have a really good relationship. And I just thought, you know what, it's really nice to see those types of things, and that's visible, and the husband and wife working together in the hobby, doing something, in the not, in something very personal. I thought it just really was kind of a neat thing. And I thought, I just need to have you two on and kind of discuss that. So anyway, I just want to say I appreciate it, all the positive things that are said via Twitter.
Well, thanks. I appreciate all of your support and uplifting when I'm, having a freak out.
Yeah, I don't know. The problem I have sometimes is, I don't want to. I'm more aware now of, I don't want to be like that guy too. So I try and make sure how I try and meter out what I say or do as not coming across as some middle-aged white man mansplaining things to people, or being insensitive or things like that. So I try and everything to be very positive, and that's always my intent, and be supportive when I see people who are trying to do great things feeling down.
Yeah, it's really appreciated. It does help me gain some perspective. I do appreciate you.
Well, good. Well, good. So anyway, we'll end this with mutual appreciation, and and I'll have you two back on sometime in the future.
Oh, most definitely.
Thanks a lot, Jeff.